today's guest is someone that I met in person. We had lunch together. She is a psychotherapist in Connecticut who specializes in trauma. There she is. Let's try again. Couples counseling, which kind of makes me nervous because I think about my own experiences. Oh, it worked.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was just saying, Susan, I didn't even say your name yet, and I'll let you do that. But I was just talking about how you're a psychotherapist that specializes in trauma, but that you also do a lot of couples counseling. And when we met, I was telling you how almost all of our clients, well, actually all of our clients and probably most of this community who will be listening and watching later have been traumatized. And I think part of my own trauma was going through couples counseling, no offense, because the therapist actually made things worse. So before you even introduce yourself and we get into it, at what point do people arrive on your doorstep? Like, what even makes somebody show up to a couple counselor or to a
People
psychotherapist?
people come to couples counseling for different reasons because being a couple or just being in a relationship has many problems. And so people come like when some people come when there's like minor problems and they just kind of want to communicate better. There are some people that are on the brink of divorce that come to couples counseling. There's people that newlyweds, they've just gotten married and they just want to make sure that they have like a good foundation for their relationship. And I've also seen people in abusive relationships try to come to couples therapy. I usually don't accept people who are in abusive relationships because it's just not safe um, for the client and or the clients that are involved. So different reasons why people come, and those are the reasons why I've seen it. And there's some people that come because maybe there's one partner in the relationship that kind of like has this preconceived notion that like if they come to couples therapy it's going to get the other person to be on board with what they want, or it's going to help the other person change something that they want that person to change, so they kind of drag the other one to couples therapy. So yes, those are some of the reasons why I've seen people come.
Yeah. Okay. So I already have my first question for you based on what you just said, but before I ask, can you tell people exactly who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Yes. So my name is Suzanne Taluy, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I am the owner and founder of Embrace Psychotherapy, located in Norwalk, Connecticut. So I manage the practice. We're a group of clinicians that work with different types of populations. I would say young children to older adults. I would say 65 and plus, everybody in between. Some of us do work with couples, but mostly we're specializing in trauma and life transitions.
All right. So when you said that you don't work with couples dealing with abuse, how do you know? I wish I had gone to a therapist who told me ahead of time, don't even bother. So what are some red flags? Like, how can you tell if it's a couple coming to you?
Well, first thing I would recommend is that anybody in search of a couples therapist always do a consultation with that person before going into therapy, because you have to make sure that that person is going to be a good fit for both of you.
Mhm.
Um, you want to have a chance to ask some questions. So I have had consultations where people have said, this person is actively using drugs. And that's something that I will say no to. I've had consultations where they'll say, well, this person yells at me and puts me down, or this person, there has been some physical violence that's still ongoing. And I would let them know in that consultation, it is important that you guys seek your own therapy, and that the physical violence or the like emotional or mental abuse stop before coming into couples therapy. Um, so that's how I kind of screen people. There probably has been some instances where people have like said after like coming in, like, yes, this is what's happening. And then
Mhm.
like I definitely educate them in the session and be like, well, this isn't safe. And there's not much that I would be able to do outside of like, this space that you guys come to for 1 hour a week, to really help you with this, unless you guys agree to both get help on your own. So that's the only situation I think that I would continue. I might just pause the sessions until like they identified their own people or own therapists to go to, and then they would come back and resume couples therapy.
So really it's that we can't like fix something that's actively being broken at the same time, and that people should see their own therapist, and then when they're in a better place where there's not that kind of abuse going on, then to work on making it a really healthy relationship. But it sounds like you're saying some relationships are just not healthy and you can't work on an unhealthy power dynamic.
It's the same thing when you work with an individual who is in ongoing trauma. It's really, really, really difficult to stabilize that person when the trauma is ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
I would say almost impossible. So it's kind of the same thing where that they're in a actively traumatic situation, and if the trauma is still going on, how can you heal from it?
Yeah. I mean, as you're saying that, I'm taking all these notes. Um, it's tricky because our clients are all, oh, not all, many of them are actively dealing with trauma caused by legal abuse. So many of them are in situations where it's years of court, in and out, in and out. And so they're still trying to process it. So it sounds like it'd be really difficult as a therapist working with someone like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have worked with people that have gone, and I think that's how we connected.
Yeah.
Because I had one particular client that was in a is in a situation where there is illegal abuse, and it was took a long time for her to just get to a point where she's ignoring him and some of the things that he said, because he'll pull out things like, the stipulation says this and he's not following it, and scare her by saying that I'm going to take you back to court. And so like it took a while for her to know, like, okay, he's just barking and there's no bite.
Mhm.
um but that took a long time for her to get to, and she went through a lot getting to that point. So it is hard to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I know it. Like we often talk about taking the team approach when it comes to clients like that, because there's so many pillars, like so many levels of support. And we often say, therapists are trying to help you heal, but they often don't understand the trauma of being in the court system. And so that's where Chris and I fill in, because we do a lot more with strategy in terms of helping them get through it. And we've had a number of people tell us, I feel like my therapist, all I'm doing is talking about court stuff.
Mhm.
So now I can split it up and work on my trauma with my therapist and deal with the legal stuff with you guys, because we can actually, you know, figure out a plan moving forward with that. So it's like it splits, if that
Absolutely.
makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we're not in a position to give legal advice, and we don't know about the court system. I know of things that I've heard from, like,
Yeah.
people who have gone through divorce, but everybody's situation is different. So I think, yeah, it does turn into that, and that's another thing that makes it hard, because they're like, oh well, I'm scared he could do this, or she could do this, or whatever the case is, and it's a lot of, well, I think a part of it is like you kind of want to like check the facts with your clients and kind of
Mhm.
let them, like, whatever they're fearing might not be real, but then you don't know when it comes to the court system. So it's really hard.
Yeah, and we often hear the line, feelings are not facts, but for people dealing with this kind of trauma, they don't know what the facts are,
Hmm.
because their ex's voice is so ingrained in their mind that they're terrified all the time.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah. Now, before, when you were talking about having a consult with a therapist ahead of time, and you're able to screen a bit to figure out ways, are there things that questions that a person should be asking a therapist to see if it is the right fit?
Absolutely. Um, I would ask like what kind of training they've gotten. There's
Mhm.
some trainings that out there that are specifically made for couples. There's Gotham. I can't think of the full name of it. but that Gotham, I think Gotham trained therapist.
Mhm.
Um, that's a couples approach. There's emotionally focused therapy that I actually took that was by Sue Johnson. That's another couples approach. I would say those are the top two. There's other ones out there where they're not necessarily made for couples, but you can go a couples route with the therapies. And so I would ask like what kind of training they have, and maybe if they can tell you a little bit about that training. And I would also encourage the couple looking to do some research on their own about like what that training is and what it entails. Um, I would ask like how long has the therapist been seeing couples? I would maybe ask about their individual approach and beliefs where when it comes to couples. And if they have like any goals for a couple coming into their office. um so yeah, those are some of the questions that I would ask, and if there's anything specific that the couple is struggling with, I would ask the therapist about their experience with that specific issue.
Mhm. And as you're saying, struggle with it, it's still like certain things that therapists like you isn't going to touch, like someone who's actively in, addicted and or dealing with domestic violence.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
like you said, that's like maybe a mistake or a misconception that people have is that you as a therapist are going to fix it.
yes, I mean, we're really, when I took my training, what they told us is that we're not there to fix anything. They actually gave us a title. They said, you guys are process consultants. Um,
Hmm.
what that means is like the couples come in and they process whatever issues that they're dealing with in their relationship, and we guide them. And
Hmm.
so we tell them, oh, we'll have them do role play in the office, and we'll say, speak to your partner, and just tell them how you feel, talk about the feelings. So we'll teach them how, like, effective communication skills. We'll validate their feelings individually. Will help the other person have empathy or empathize with the other's feelings. Will uncover some of the trauma that's led up to their relationship attachment styles in the
Hmm.
relationship. So that's basically what we are. We're not there to fix, we're there to guide. And so I want everybody to kind of know that, like, nobody can fix anything. Like, it takes the two people that are involved in that relationship to really want to work on their issues in order
Yeah.
for it to.
Yeah. Are there other, actually, well, let me pause for a second. So I told you about my own situation years ago when I was right those 2 years before the actual divorce was filed, where I was told to go to couples counseling with my ex, and we went to a therapist that had been his individual therapist for years, like a while before that. And later I look back and think, why did the
Mhm,
therapist who was like his ally do
mhm.
couple counseling with us, which ended up being awful for me and re-traumatized me in ways I didn't understand till later. Would you ever do something like that, or can you explain why a therapist would have an individual client that she had worked with for years and then say, oh, I'll now be your couples counselor?
It's not a good idea. I can't speak to why a therapist would do that. I can say that I've had situations where I'm working with an individual and they might say, can I bring my partner in on the session?
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay for a couple of sessions, but then I would make it clear that I'm this person's therapist. But the reason why you're here is for this objective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so so they would know that I'm not doing couples therapy with them. So yes, that's not a good idea, and you're absolutely right. That person had an alliance, and especially for years, like that's
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Because you see in a couple of months, like, okay, maybe we'll do couples therapy, but years of seeing that person, and that therapist like has built a whole relationship with them where you're coming in as an outsider, and you
Yeah.
wouldn't be wrong for feeling that way even if the therapist didn't say it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I not a good idea.
Yeah, it was awful. And I know I'm not the only one who experienced something like this, but I remember, in our relationship there had been infidelity, it was discovered, it had been going on for a while, and the therapist who was my ex's therapist, originally said, she said if he promised to end that other relationship, only then could we go to couples therapy, and that it should take 6 months to decide if we were going to get a divorce or stay together. And then we started therapy, and I never felt like my ex was being honest, which of course we found out like 5 months later. But one of the things she did that I think expressed that alliance was she would tell me to shelve my feelings. She said, you should shelve your feelings and let's focus on him right now and think about why he's done these things and what you did wrong in the relationship. And I was like, oh my,
Wow.
because it was, I mean, when someone is a serial cheater, it's different, I imagine, than someone who just has an affair. And I felt like she completely didn't understand. And then when it came out like that my ex had been fooling both of us the whole time, she was just like, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't know. And I thought, the damage that you just caused after all of this just made things so much worse.
That sounds like a really awful experience, and I'm sorry that you went through that. And I mean, and I'm sorry because when I hear about these experiences, like I feel bad because we as therapists, like we're supposed to provide a safe space for our clients, and therapy is very sacred, like at least it is to me. And so like, having to gone through that experience is hard and it's traumatizing. And it kind of like makes you not trust therapists. So
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I'm sorry that you went through it. I would say that even if, I would say mistake number one was like her having worked with him for a number of years and then bringing you in. Even if she did do that, you don't tell people to shelve their feelings. You're supposed to validate how they feel and try to
Mm.
gain understanding of how they feel. And it sounds like you were kind of being blamed for the issues in the relationship, and whereas like she wasn't really holding him accountable, so that was not a good situation.
No, it was like I haven't thought about it in a while, but it was horrific. It was, I mean, she used to say things like, "Well, you should be thankful that your ex is doing online stuff rather than with your neighbor because at least you don't have to run into the person." And I'm like,
Wow. Wow.
it was crazy. Yeah, and so one of the things I want to make sure I also mention is that because we work with domestic violence victims exclusively, a lot of them have been to therapy, like a couples counselor, and have said that the couples counselor pulled them aside after a couple of sessions and said, listen, almost like what you do beforehand, like this is not a good relationship. Like this person is either a narcissist or has some kind of personality disorder. We're not going to improve anything, but you really should think about leaving. And I remember asking you this privately, and I'll ask you this now, like, why wouldn't a therapist have said that to me? Why don't therapists, if they see something, say something like that?
Well, I feel I would say why therapists wouldn't say that,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, I, in at least in my training, we were told like you don't tell a couple whether they should stay together or leave each other, um,
Mm-hmm.
unless the situation is really bad. But for you, I think your therapist already broke a lot of ethical like um guidelines. So it actually wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't have been bad if she had said like, you should the situation. It seems like she was kind of like you said, more aligned with your ex. And that was the reason why maybe she didn't make that suggestion to you. And who knows if he wanted to like stay in the relationship, maybe she was kind of like trying to like meet whatever goal he had. So that could be why she didn't say anything to you. So I think if it's something that's really bad, you're kind of like obligated to say something out of the just because like you're supposed to keep people safe as a clinician. And so like if it is an issue where there is like domestic violence, or if like the person is being really abusive to the other person in the session, which I have experience where they're like screaming at them, yelling at them, calling them names, just really disrespectful, you would make that suggestion.
Yeah, and actually now you're reminding me because I said we went to three couples counselors. after, over those 2 years. And the second one gave my ex a diagnosis that he didn't like and made a recommendation that he didn't like. And of course, he fired her and said that she didn't like him and that she was going to make money off him. So we couldn't believe her. But then the third therapist saw us very briefly. And I remember at one point she was trying to do some kind of empathy exercise, and she just said, forget it. And she told me in the parking lot, because she saw me sitting there one day with my head in my hands, and she asked if I was okay. And she said, I don't think that your husband is capable of really empathizing with what you're going through. She didn't say straight out what to do. She just made an observation and then kept driving. But yeah, it was it was off. I think you're right. I do have not that I am anti-therapy, but for myself, I think if someone suggested couples counseling, I'd just be like, I don't want to do it because of what happened, which is unfortunate. And we think about too, parents with kids in therapeutic situations. We were just talking about it yesterday with one of our clients, where there's court ordered therapy where a therapist is reporting to court directly, and then there's a child getting therapeutic help for themselves, and how it's really tricky, because if a child's going to a therapist who is going to be reporting to court, then there is no safe space. The child can't really trust the therapist because they know that whatever they say is going to be made public and is part of the litigation. So yeah, it's really hard.
It is hard. It is
Yeah.
hard. There was one thing that I wanted to say. Oh, when you were saying about trusting therapists, I would just kind of just go back to when we were first talking about what questions you should ask a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeking couples therapy. The training is so important because it is really, really hard to be a couples therapist.
Yeah.
Um, it is hard to create an alliance with both people. Sometimes you can be working with someone who has a narcissistic personality, or you can work with someone who's maybe not narcissistic but very manipulative, and if you're not on their side or agreeing with what they're saying, or if they feel like you're disagreeing with them, even if you're not, you're just kind of validating the other person,
Uh-huh.
it could manipulate the therapist into maybe backtracking, or because the worst thing is being accused of that in a session, as a
Yeah.
therapist, person is saying, oh yeah, you're not on my side, you're on
Yeah.
their, you don't like me. So it is really hard to be a couples therapist, partially for that reason. And you have to make sure somebody has really solid training so they know how to deal with those type of situations.
Yeah. Yeah. That was something I never even considered asking. Of course, 2020 hindsight. But are there other things so we talked about some of the misconceptions people had about therapy and couples therapy in particular. Are there certain things that people should keep in mind? Things that they should do. We talked a little bit about, asking those questions, but anything else for people in this community who are dealing all with domestic violence? I mean, I guess we know to stay away from couples counseling, but anything they can do in terms of helping themselves when they're dealing with a really difficult ex?
I would say seek out your own therapist,
Mm-hmm.
because that person can really give you some guidance and help you through a difficult situation. And as a person who works with individuals, it's really easy for me to say when a situation isn't okay or when it's not right, and to tell the person to get out of the situation.
Yeah.
So if you are dealing with a situation like that, a therapist would help guide you through that. I would say also, don't be afraid to get a consultation with a lawyer or a couple of lawyers to kind of understand your rights a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so those are the two things I would say, that if you're in a really very severe situation where you're not safe, and there's violence being you're in a violent situation almost every day, then you would definitely want to seek out a shelter or some way that you have out of that you can get out of that situation. I would say, like, calling the police definitely. They can help you get out of that situation, get a restraining order. So if it's something severe, you definitely should seek the legal system. But if it's something where it's maybe not that severe and you just don't feel like you should be in it anymore, definitely a therapist, and definitely talking to some lawyers.
Yeah. So also you work specifically with trauma and you talked about training. I know when I was looking for a therapist for myself, I was asking for therapists who specialized in addiction because of the stuff with my ex. And the therapist I ended up hiring that I loved and went to for a while, she said, I don't specialize in that, but I do specialize in trauma and I think I could help you. And I didn't know anything about trauma at that time. And she was really helpful. So say someone like me or someone like a lot of people in this community, when they're looking for a type of therapist, do you also recommend they should find someone who specializes in trauma or anything else in particular besides that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that when people hear the word trauma, they think of something very catastrophic.
Mm-hmm.
And trauma is it's on a spectrum. Like, there's definitely situations where maybe you wouldn't label it as trauma, but it's very impactful to you, where it does affect you on a day-to-day basis. And divorce is one of them. Like, being in a very difficult relationship is another one. So yes, I would recommend a trauma therapist or somebody who's just trained to work with relationships.
Mm-hmm.
There is a discipline in therapy that is licensed marriage and family counselors, or
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah,
LMFT, yeah.
yeah. So those individuals are trained to work with that kind of situation as well.
Okay, so even because I always think LMFT, like licensed marriage and family therapist, that would only be a couples counselor, but you're saying someone like that could do individual therapy as well?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's helpful. All right, so Suzanne, can you tell people how to find you?
So if you wanted to get in touch with me, I do have an account here on Instagram, Embrace Psychotherapy LLC. My website is embracepsychotherapyllc.com, and my email is staluy@embracepsychotherapyllc.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. You gave me some flashbacks.
Oh, I'm sorry to
No,
bring.
no, no, no. It's good. I think it's really important to also remember what it was like at that time and being so confused and not having the right couples counselor, and now realizing I should have never ever been near a couples counselor.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, I'm going to stress it, like, have consultations. Like, this is someone that you're trusting to guide you through your relationship. So, like, have a consultation with the people that you're looking at, and you and your partner can determine if they're a good fit, because, maybe somebody might say something that's off, or they might not have the training that you're looking for. So it's just important to have a consultation with that person.
Right. The therapist might have the consultation if you're with a partner and enlighten you that maybe it's not the reason they're not taking you is because it's not a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because 1 in 2 people in abusive situations don't even realize that they're dealing with it.
Yes, it's actually insane. I've worked with people who have also come out of a very severely abusive relationship, and when you use the word abuse, they're like, "Oh my God!" Like, don't
Yeah.
I don't know if I like that word, and it's like,
Yeah.
we're in that kind of situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Suzanne, for coming on and talking about this. It's a
No
really important topic.
problem. No problem. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you and your platform.
Thanks. All right. Let's definitely stay in touch.
We will. Have a
Okay.
good one.
You too.
Bye.